One of the moments in the series that fans have been waiting for in My Hero Academia is for Deku to surpass All Might. We know that this has to happen because with each new generation of the One For All quirk, the power gets built up and gets stronger over time. But now that Deku has had the quirk for a while now and has expanded it by using various other quirks alongside it, I want to go over the possibility of him having surpassed All Might right now. And I do want to thank Saud on Twitter for this, as him and I have discussed this topic heavily, and it was a fun thing to talk about, and he helped direct me to easily find the scans to support the discussion that was in this video. Now, of course, it is very important to reiterate that Deku is essentially destined to surpass All Might. Like I said just moments ago, with each passing of the torch for One For All, the power adapts and grows stronger, with each user manifesting more and more power into it. Since Deku has gotten it after All Might, that means that he will surpass him. This has been stated over and over again, and it's pretty much an undebatable topic. So before we talk about Deku surpassing All Might, I want to talk about the two variables that were holding him back from surpassing him in the first place. This would be his own base physical strength being lesser than All Might's, and his lack of control with the quirk One For All itself. We know that All Might was built like a tank when he was younger. This is probably why he was able to instantly use One For All from the jump. I'm sure that the other part of that equation is that he was also dealing with a weaker version of One For All compared to Deku, and that might also be as well. All Might was physically stronger, and he was dealing with a weaker quirk. But Deku has drastically increased his physical prowess since the very beginning of the series. He had the 10-month training with All Might in the very beginning of the series, and he kept training a long time after that. And then, in the My Hero Academia movie, the Two Heroes film, he had his physical stats amplified by Katsumo Shimano's Cell Activation quirk. This is almost like a healing quirk, but the ability of the quirk also allows him to increase one's body recovery time as well as their physical capabilities. So not only did Katsuma heal Deku, it implies that he also drastically improved Deku's physical stats. This means that his own base stats of strength, speed, durability, etc. should all be vastly superior to than what they were before these events in the film. This movie is canon, so this applies to the My Hero Academia manga itself. So the variable of Deku's body being physically too weak is now not really the problem anymore. The problem is him still trying to fully control the strongest version of One For All so far. And it has been really interesting to see him grow and adapt over the course of the series. I still remember watching him very early on, nearly killing himself every time he wanted to use the quirk. To jump high, break his legs, to punch, break his arm. It was crazy to see him use such power and how that power affected him. Then to see him adapt to use 5%, and it was cool seeing him learn as he was using a much weaker version of One For All, but he was basically letting it flow throughout his body, but so he could consistently use the power and be superhuman. Then he would go to 8%, then he would go up to 20%, then 30% higher and higher, to the point where he's now at 40 and 45%. And as a fan of this series, it's been a great journey to see Deku grow. But furthermore, Deku has developed some of the quirks of the previous users of One For All. Fajin is a quirk that allows Deku to build up and store kinetic energy as he moves, and they can be released later on to vastly increase the speed and power of his abilities. This is a very important quirk that we will have to come back to later on in this video to fully explain what it can do. Deku also has Danger Sense, so basically like Spidey Sense. There's almost like a sixth sense precognition that warns him of threats and dangers in the area. This increases his reaction times, as well as improves his ability to recognize threats to his person, and increases his battle sensing as well. The first additional quirk that Deku unlocked was the Black Whip. The Black Whip is just made up of tendrils of black energy that looks super cool and kind of reminds me of Venom, that allow for Deku to grab things and increases the mobility and agility, almost like webs for Spider-Man in a sense. There's also Smokescreen, which, just like in the good old days of Call of Duty, creates a massive smoke cloud that blocks vision in the area. Then, finally, there is Nana's quirk, Float, which is a pseudo form of flight that allows Deku to suspend himself in the air. All these quirks are important because they are stacked on top of Deku's One For All power. Now, while it is hard to compare percentages because Deku is using a stronger form of One For All, Deku can use 40% now regularly without drawbacks, but we don't really know how that stacks up to All Might's 100%. We can actually come to a conclusion via power scaling and bringing in how strong Shigaraki was in the manga. Shigaraki was given the All For One quirk, as well as many body modifications to enhance his body to well beyond superhuman levels. He was such a threat that Aizawa was forced to use his Eraser quirk on him during the war arc. And while this helped, as Shiggy cannot use his quirks in battle, he was still damn near unstoppable without his quirks. Not only this, but it showed how strong the body modifications that he underwent. There are several statements that compare his power to All Might, in chapter 276, Endeavor compares his abilities to All Might. Though the Doctor would say he is not quite to All Might's level, this is contradicted later on by there being far more statements that Shiggy is at All Might's level, as Aizawa even compares him to a perfected Nomu, the one that All Might fought way back then. And remember how tough of a time All Might had with a Nomu way back in the beginning of the series? And Shigaraki in his base form is compared to that? Endeavor then says again that Shigaraki is just as strong as All Might. So we get that base Shigaraki is as fast, as strong, and as durable as All Might. Deku would be a big part of the effort to take down Shigaraki, but eventually Aizawa would get shot and his quirk would get erased itself, allowing Shiggy to summon the powers of All for One and his myriad of quirks. Yet Deku, when using 100% power in tandem with his Black Whip, is able to punish the living hell out of Shigaraki, landing multiple 100% smashes on him that damage him heavily, and showing comparable stats in every other way, like speed and durability. If Shiggy in his base form without quirks is equal to All Might's speed, power, and durability, then with 75% of One for All stacked on top of that, he is clearly above All Might, and Deku was fighting him, and that would mean that Deku would have to be above All Might. Now, the thing is that Deku gets stronger from here on out, as there's another arc after this war arc, but anyways. Now the only issue is that during this point, it was incredibly hard for Deku to use these top levels of power as it damages his body. So, while he shows the power to surpass All Might, would he have the endurance to do that though? Well, at first, no. But now, he clearly does. As in the current arc, Deku can access these 100% powers in a way that does not hurt his body whatsoever, a power dubbed Faux 100%. When Deku pairs 45% of his quirk, One for All, with the quirk Fa Jin, the quirk that builds up and stores kinetic energy, it combines the energy from One for All and the energy stored up from Fa Jin, which allows him to use 100% power without doing any harm to himself. Now there is some debate in the fandom on whether or not Faux 100% is actually at the level of All Might, but the narrator pretty much backs it up when the narrator says, the sight of All Might moving faster than a speeding bullet. And it says that as he is using the Faux 100% to save Overhaul, and then he uses it again to destroy Lady Nagant's rifle with Faux 100% Manchester Smash. And because Deku's power is above All Might's, that makes his Faux 100% attacks well above All Might's. So, Deku can use 100% attack that would be stronger than All Might's. He would have higher reaction speeds in battle because of his danger sense, he can use Smoke Screen to escape or flurry All Might senses, and he has Black Whip for multiple advantages, and then he has Float as well. So yes, Deku has surpassed All Might. He's an incredibly powerful character in his own right now. He is at the level of high-level pro heroes. But while Deku has surpassed the All Might that we know and love, I do not think this proves that Deku has yet surpassed All Might in his prime, as we know that Prime All Might was roughly 60 times stronger than he was at the beginning of the series, as he would have needed only 5 punches to defeat Nomu in his prime, whereas in the beginning, he needed 300 punches at the Battle of USJ. Again, this really needs to be reiterated, the power of base Shigaraki, because I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this video, but base Shiggy, as I said, was equal to All Might. Multiple statements from Endeavor and Aizawa saying that he was equal to All Might or the Nomu that fought All Might to a standstill. There is the one statement where the Doctor says that Shiggy isn't quite on par with All Might yet, but the way he words that statement implies that he is very close, quite on par. This means that if Shiggy was only using 90 to 95% as strong as All Might in his base form, using the 75% All for One on top of that skyrockets him past All Might. But you have one statement saying that Shiggy is near All Might's level, and 3 saying that he is at All Might's level. So you can logically say that it is so close in power to All Might that it wouldn't be relevant to discuss the difference in power. It could be something like he is 99.99% of All Might. It's so close that it just really doesn't matter at all. And that's base Shigaraki. He gets 75% All for One on top of that, and then Deku's gonna get way stronger as well. Now, I already know that some of the common debunks that people are going to be using for Deku being above All Might, and they'll say that Shigaraki was wounded by the time he was fighting Deku because of his massive team-up that included Endeavor. But you have to remember that Shigaraki surpassed his limits in this fight, meaning his base power was another tier above All Might. He got these dark striations across his body. Gran Torino says he has surpassed his limits, and then Deku says he got even faster as well. While it is stated that All for One is too much for his body to keep up with, he still has hyper regeneration, which counteracts that. It just makes his hyper regeneration act slower. This is proven by his body. It is literally adapting to Deku's 100% hits, the strongest powers that he can use. His body is still adapting to it. Deku spans many of his 100% hits on Shigaraki, and it still would take a prominence burn after all those hits to end up defeating him. So you have base Shigaraki is equal to All Might, then he surpasses his limits, and then he gets All for One activated on top of that when it's reactivated after Aizawa is shot. This is putting at several levels above All Might, and while yes, his body is damaged, he has the hyper regeneration still. It is just working slower. He is still way stronger just because his body is still adapting to Deku's 100% power. So if you look at this, where Deku is hitting him over and over and over again, this is essentially somebody who is above or equal to All Might. If you really want to downplay Shigaraki, this guy is equal to All Might, but he really is stronger, and he's taking all these hits. The only reason why he's still there is because of their regeneration. He even said his regeneration is basically not fast enough for Deku's attacks. So this means that if All Might were right here instead of Shigaraki, he would probably lose. And while yes, Deku gets hurt from spamming 100%, he now has faux 100%. So doing this over and over again, Deku would likely defeat All Might. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts on this video down below. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you think that Deku surpassed All Might. Let me know what you want me to make for videos on My Hero Academia. You can also check out my light novel series called 9 Fates at 9fates.com, completely free to read. I hope you guys all have an amazing day. Plus...